Taurus. There comes a point when the thing you fear losing is no longer the thing causing the deepest pain. Because what truly frightens you is the possibility that the entire world you spent so long holding together could collapse the moment you stop supporting it. Maybe that is why you remained where you were long after your heart began asking for something different. Somewhere inside, you lived the belief that you were the final pillar, the dependable presence that could not bend, because if you did, everything resting upon you might fall. Yet a more important question is beginning to rise now, and it is asking who has been taking care of you while you have been taking care of everyone and everything else. This is not a demand that you abandon your life, and it is not an invitation to run from responsibility. It is a reminder that sometimes departure is not an escape at all. Sometimes it is the search for a place where your inner world can become alive again. Every loyal soul eventually reaches this threshold, the point where strength stops feeling noble and begins feeling unbearably heavy. Pay attention to what is happening inside you now, because this threshold is where renewal begins. My dear Taurus, perhaps everything around you still looks recognizable, yet somehow the life beneath your feet has stopped feeding you. Perhaps each evening brings another invisible fracture inside your heart, and you cannot fully explain why something once associated with security now leaves you feeling depleted. Consider the possibility that this feeling has arrived with purpose, because it may carry something your spirit has been waiting an immeasurably long time to understand. Your Taurus nature was never designed for emptiness. You were drawn toward creating something solid, lasting, and dependable. When other people became impatient, you remained. When they stopped trying, you continued constructing. When responsibility became difficult, you absorbed more of it without announcing what it cost you. Somewhere along the way, maintaining everything became so consuming that your own desires disappeared beneath the duties you kept fulfilling. Perhaps what you are protecting is a partnership, perhaps a home, perhaps an obligation you once promised to honor, perhaps the professional life you worked years to establish. Whatever form it takes, there is one question that deserves your complete attention now. Is what you call security still giving your heart any peace? There was a period in my own life when I remained inside work that emptied me emotionally because leaving seemed irresponsible. I kept thinking that somebody had to shoulder what I was carrying. I also tried to preserve a home whose deeper structure was already damaged because I believed releasing my grip would cause everything to collapse. Then came an ordinary night that changed something fundamental inside me. There was no dramatic event, only stillness, and my hands were finally empty enough for me to recognize what I had refused to see. The situation was not asking me to rescue it. I was the one who needed rescuing. More specifically, I needed freedom from the identity I had created around constant responsibility. An identity so consumed with holding life together that it had forgotten how to exist without performing a function. Taurus, your devotion has been enormous. When you love, you bring persistence and loyalty with you. You have extended forgiveness beyond the point where many people would have stopped. There were moments when your own pain was the loudest pain in the room, yet you remained the quietest person there. Your staying was never proof that you lacked the courage to leave. You remained because somewhere within you, endurance became connected to value, as though surviving enough hardship could demonstrate how worthy, dependable, or loving you were. Yet ask yourself, who actually noticed the price of that endurance? Who studied the exhaustion behind your eyes and wondered what you needed? Who recognized the pressure on your shoulders and gave you permission to stop carrying everything? Perhaps very few people did, because everyone became accustomed to seeing you as the stable place they could return to. But peace does not require you to become emotionally immovable. Recovery is not created by increasing your tolerance for suffering. It begins when you allow your own comfort to matter without immediately punishing yourself with guilt or frightening yourself with imagined consequences. If darkness arrives tonight and that familiar weariness returns, And if you realize that enduring emotional storms silently has become almost automatic, understand what your exhaustion is communicating. It is not evidence that your strength has disappeared. It is what happens when a person carries responsibilities beyond their rightful season. Your tiredness has become an inner alarm, something sacred inside you, insisting that rest is no longer optional. You are allowed to experience the beauty you spent so much energy building. You are allowed to stop standing guard over everything. You are allowed to leave what has become lifeless, not from selfishness, but because the neglected ground within you deserves another season of growth. The goodbye approaching you, whether it concerns another person, an identity you have occupied, or a pattern repeated every day, does not have to represent defeat. It can represent the restoration of your right to renew yourself. Imagine finally removing protection so heavy that you forgot how unrestricted breathing felt. Imagine meeting your reflection and recognizing someone beyond the person who merely survived. That is the shift taking place here, from existing through endurance toward actually participating in your own life. However many months or years you have spent tolerating what depleted you, remember that nothing living is meant to remain indefinitely in soil where nothing can grow. A soul is not given life merely to repeat an outdated pattern forever. And Taurus was never meant to spend every season constructing a beautiful shelter while never being able to experience the comfort inside it. So when these words create movement in your chest, when something in you trembles, or when an unexplained heaviness suddenly becomes impossible to ignore, recognize what that reaction may be showing you. The moment of transformation has reached the point where postponement carries its own cost. There is another consequence of leaving that you may not have considered. Your release can create release for other people too. Anyone who became dependent upon your steadiness may finally be required to discover their own balance when you stop providing it for them. Your withdrawal allows relationships and responsibilities to rearrange themselves. Your departure creates room for the larger movement of life to find a different rhythm. If releasing your grip still feels almost impossible, put one sentence onto paper now. I welcome change so I can return to myself. Let those words become a private ceremony, a small commitment spoken clearly enough for the universe to receive it. Then ask yourself what feels most frightening to surrender. Perhaps it is certainty. Perhaps it is something you remember. Perhaps it is an earlier identity that invested years in demonstrating to everyone that you could always be counted upon. Name it. Give it language. Somewhere, another Taurus may be carrying the same invisible burden and may need to encounter exactly what you are finally willing to admit. Yet leaving is only the doorway, because what follows can feel even more unsettling. Once the familiar structure disappears, you enter a territory for which nobody prepared you, a place where stability is absent and your old coordinates no longer work. This is where the next stage opens, inside the uncertainty that arrives before renewal. After crossing beyond what you knew, you may expect immediate liberation, but what greets you first can be an enormous quiet. It is not the soothing quiet you imagined. It can feel vacant, unfamiliar, and strangely cold. You are suspended between realities, unable to return comfortably to the identity behind you, while still unable to describe the person emerging ahead. Questions begin appearing almost immediately. Perhaps you made a mistake. Perhaps you moved too quickly. Perhaps wanting another kind of existence was never something you had earned. Perhaps the entire vision of a different future was only fantasy. Evenings can suddenly feel unfamiliar when the message you once expected no longer arrives to ask whether you have eaten. Morning can feel equally strange when the routine that once organized your movements has vanished. Beneath the loneliness, there may be something deeper, an emptiness resembling the sensation of losing the ground that once supported your entire identity. Taurus, this is where you must listen more carefully than ever. What feels unstable is also the ground in which something new can eventually take root. The quiet frightening you is creating space, because former duties are loosening their hold, allowing desires buried underneath them to finally have somewhere to exist. You have not disappeared from your path. Your inner terrain is being turned over like earth prepared before planting, and during that process, the landscape can become so unfamiliar that even you may wonder where the person you knew has gone. Nobody teaches us how to inhabit this kind of quiet. There is no lesson that fully prepares someone for spiritual isolation that cannot easily be explained to another person. Sometimes even your own emotions resist definition because what you are experiencing is larger than ordinary sorrow. It is mourning created by awakening, the grief that appears when your spirit realizes it cannot unknow what it has finally seen. Naturally, part of you may crave a return. Familiar affection can suddenly seem irresistible. Predictability can look comforting again, even when it belonged to an environment that never truly sustained you. Guard this moment carefully, because your vulnerability is strongest here. This is when returning to something whose season has already ended can seem easier than remaining inside the emptiness of transition. Do not exchange the first taste of liberation for comfort that lasts only long enough to silence your fear. Do not cover every quiet moment with distractions merely because stillness hurts. The silence itself is part of the passage back toward your own center. I have known nights like that too, sitting awake with a phone in my hands and wondering whether somebody somewhere still required something from me. Eventually, I recognized that another person's message was not what I was actually searching for. What I needed was my own commitment, that I would not abandon myself simply because nobody else was asking for my presence. Have you ever offered yourself that kind of loyalty? Have you ever sat alone in a room that felt unbearably empty, placed your palm against your chest, and told yourself that from this day onward you would choose the peace within you? If you have never done that, tonight can become that moment. There does not need to be a ceremony around you. Nobody needs to witness it. Nothing decorative is required. Your presence, given completely to yourself, is enough. Afterward, you may become aware of unusual patterns appearing around you. Repeated numbers may catch your attention. A song from another period of your life may surface at an uncannily appropriate moment. Certain coincidences may feel unusually meaningful, and intuition may begin communicating through sensations rather than audible words. There is no need to fear these experiences or assume that you are losing your grip. Within the meaning of this journey, they can feel like guidance becoming noticeable, because your spirit finally has enough quiet to be heard after years of being buried beneath obligation. And inside that stillness, one realization can eventually become unmistakable. Your value does not require further evidence. You do not have to demonstrate it to your parents. You do not have to earn it through your partner. You do not have to establish it for your friends. Existing as yourself is permitted. Being here without constantly proving your usefulness is already enough. And if these words suddenly tighten your throat, if emotion reaches your eyes before your mind can explain where it came from, understand this. What is moving through you now is not evidence that you are becoming fragile, Taurus. It is evidence that something buried beneath years of endurance has finally begun to rise. Imagine a seed beneath heavy earth, unseen by everyone above it, moving upward so gradually that nobody notices the transformation, until one day green life appears where there seemed to be nothing. That is what is happening inside you. Your return may be quiet, but quiet does not mean powerless. Something in you has chosen life again, and the silence surrounding this transformation was never meant to trap you. It has created the room you needed so that, perhaps for the first time in a very long while, your own inner voice can reach you without being drowned beneath obligations, expectations, and other people's needs. Do not run from that quiet simply because you are unfamiliar with what it reveals. Instead, make a sacred promise within yourself and say, "I allow silence to guide me toward the light again." And if you are willing to be vulnerable, ask yourself when you last experienced the frightening sensation of having no solid ground beneath you. Share that moment, not only as something between you and me, but as an offering to another person who may be searching right now for proof that somebody understands what this emotional territory feels like. Because once you remain still enough, the silence begins revealing what busyness helped you avoid. You start noticing the ache you kept pushing aside. You remember possibilities you never allowed yourself to experience. You hear the invitation that frightened you so much that you buried it beneath practical responsibilities. This is where awakening becomes personal. Think about how long it has been since you chose an activity for no reason beyond the fact that it felt good to be alive while doing it. When did you last care for a plant simply because watching something grow brought you peace? When did you prepare something delicious only for yourself, without needing an occasion or another person to justify the effort? When did you last play a record and allow yourself to sit there doing absolutely nothing except receiving the music? And when did those deeply physical, sensory pleasures that once restored you become things you felt required to abandon because somebody convinced you they were unnecessary or unproductive? Taurus. Life may have slowly assigned you the identity of the person who handles everything. Perhaps there was a family that needed raising. Perhaps expenses had to be covered. Perhaps maintaining a dependable position became essential. Responsibility accumulated gradually, and without realizing what was happening, you exchanged pieces of your inner brightness for the image of a capable adult. The garden disappeared from your days. Cooking became another task, or vanished entirely. Enjoyment moved further and further down the list. This did not happen because those experiences stopped mattering to you. It happened because somewhere along the way, you absorbed the belief that adulthood had removed your permission to cherish them. But what you loved did not abandon you when you abandoned it. Those parts of your life became quiet. They have been waiting patiently for the moment when you would recognize them again. Listen carefully, and perhaps you can sense them now. Remember the garden that once responded to your hands. Remember the melody you hummed when nobody was around to evaluate you. Remember the aroma of the dish you enjoyed preparing before you began worrying that somebody might judge such pleasure as excessive. These are not meaningless details from an earlier version of your life. They are ways your inner being knows how to breathe. Ignore them indefinitely, and it is possible to maintain an outwardly functional existence while becoming increasingly hungry within. I know that pattern because there was also a time when I separated myself from what gave me genuine happiness. I did not stop because my affection for those things disappeared. I stopped because caring for myself felt selfish. I feared that giving time to simple pleasures would mean neglecting people who depended upon me. Responsibility always seemed entitled to the first portion of my life, while happiness was told to wait somewhere at the end. Then one morning, the truth became impossible to avoid. I had turned into an imitation of the person I remembered being. My body continued waking up. I continued completing work. Conversations continued leaving my mouth. From the outside, life was functioning, yet the unmistakable brightness that made existence feel like mine had faded. Taurus, your life does not have to satisfy another person's measurement of achievement. You are not required to demonstrate your adequacy by repeatedly choosing what leaves you disconnected from yourself. What matters is returning to the frequency that genuinely belongs to you. It may be understated. It may never demand attention. Crowds may never celebrate it, yet its quietness does not make it less authentic. There is beauty in it, precisely because it carries your unmistakable signature. When you begin living from that place, possibilities can start opening because within this spiritual journey, the universe is not asking you to become a standardized version of somebody else. Its guidance draws you toward resonance with your own soul. Go back in memory to childhood. Nobody had to explain why the warmth of a blanket could feel wonderful. Nobody needed to provide a practical justification before you sang. Building a castle from sand did not require a strategy or measurable outcome. Creation came naturally because something abundant already existed within you. Sensation, instinct, imagination, and the grounded intelligence of the earth were there before the world taught you to evaluate everything according to usefulness. That reservoir has not been destroyed. It waits for your heart to open enough for it to move through you once more. And perhaps even imagining that possibility makes you nervous because judgment still frightens you. You may worry that somebody will look at your age and question why you are still allowing yourself to dream. You may wonder whether you possess enough talent, enough experience, enough ability, or simply enough worth to begin. But joy never demanded flawless performance from you. It never required mastery before allowing you inside. It asks for presence. It asks you to arrive sincerely, carrying the heart you actually have, like someone returning after a long separation to something deeply loved and finally touching it again with care. Remain quiet, and you may begin noticing a small brightness within you. It will probably not arrive as an overwhelming flash. It may appear as something subtle that refuses to disappear. That persistent glow is the sensual and creative vitality you have restrained for so long, patiently asking to be welcomed back. You still have a choice. You can continue leaving the door closed, or you can open it and allow a beginning to happen. Beginning does not mean becoming an accomplished chef immediately. It does not mean producing a book that becomes a bestseller. It does not require transforming something you love into income the moment you rediscover it. The first requirement is far simpler. Give yourself permission to experience a life that feels truthful to you. Put this promise into words now. I give the creative and sensual life within me permission to awaken again. Let that sentence become a gentle act of restoration. And if there was once something you deeply loved that you stopped doing because of another person's influence, name it. Speak about it as though naming it is part of calling your own spirit back. Writing it down makes what was hidden visible again, and visibility gives that neglected part of you room to breathe. Perhaps the forgotten desire was to create a small bakery. Perhaps a pottery wheel remains unused somewhere in your garage. Perhaps for 5 years you have imagined planting an herb garden and have never placed the first plant into the earth. Those possibilities did not cease existing merely because you postponed them. They have remained quietly present, waiting for your first declaration, your first seed, your first full breath in their direction. Dear Taurus, your nature is deeply connected with earth, nourishment, beauty, and illumination. When you return to that inner alignment, the effect does not stop with you. Your grounded aliveness can become something other people feel when their own inner fire is struggling. The passion you once set aside can become warmth in places that have grown cold. Allow yourself to become vivid again, rooted yet alive, steady yet filled with movement. And remember that you were never erased from life. The missing recognition had to come from within your own heart. And now this journey reaches its closing threshold, not as an ending that shuts something behind you, but as an opening you can finally cross while belonging to yourself again. Taurus, thank you for remaining here through the final moment. Whatever surrounds you right now, and whatever emotion is moving through you, carry this understanding forward. Leaving was never about making yourself disappear. It was about creating the possibility of finally living as a spirit released from the enclosure that once kept it contained. Walk onward with gratitude inside you and with hands that no longer need to grip yesterday in order to feel safe. May what waits ahead bring you face to face with the most rooted, luminous, fully alive version of yourself you have ever known.